Some people carry a weight that doesn't show. They look fine. They function. They go to work. They smile when appropriate. They answer, "I'm okay," when asked. But underneath, they are carrying an accumulation of pain that would break most people. They are the ones who have gone through too much. Not one catastrophic event, but a relentless series of losses, betrayals, disappointments, and traumas that never gave them time to recover between blows. And now they are tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind of tired that lives in your bones. There is a psychology behind going through too much. Research shows that accumulated trauma, what psychologists call complex trauma or chronic stress exposure, affects the brain and body differently than single traumatic events. It's not about one breaking point. It's about 1,000 small cracks that eventually shatter the foundation. The person who has gone through too much has survived things that should have destroyed them. And they're still here, still standing, still trying. But survival is not the same as living, and endurance is not the same as healing. Psychologists identify this as cumulative adversity, when hardships pile up faster than a person can process them, when there's no rest between storms, when resilience becomes exhausted. The death, then the divorce, then the job loss, then the health crisis, then the betrayal. Each one individually would be enough, but together they create a specific kind of exhaustion that people who haven't lived it cannot comprehend. And the person who has gone through too much learns something devastating. The world doesn't stop hitting you just because you're already down. But here's what makes this particularly cruel. People who have gone through too much are often told they're so strong. And they are strong. They've survived what would have destroyed others. But that strength came at a cost, and no one asks about the cost.
No one asks how many pieces of themselves they had to lose to stay standing, how many tears they cried alone, how many times they wanted to give up but couldn't because too many people were depending on them. No one asks if they're okay, because they look fine, because they're still functioning. But functioning is not thriving, and surviving is not healing. The person who has gone through too much has developed a specific psychology. They have what researchers call hyper-resilience on the outside and emotional depletion on the inside. They can handle crisis after crisis. They don't fall apart when things go wrong because they're used to things going wrong. But that capability isn't strength. It's adaptation to chronic instability. It's a nervous system that has learned that safety is temporary and disaster is always around the corner. Every new day carries the question, what's going to go wrong today? Not pessimism, pattern recognition. When life has taught you that peace doesn't last, you stop trusting it. Scientific studies show that people who experience cumulative trauma develop altered stress responses, chronic hypervigilance, emotional numbing, and what's called learned helplessness, the belief that nothing you do can prevent bad things from happening. Their bodies are stuck in survival mode. Their cortisol levels don't regulate properly. Their nervous systems are constantly braced for the next impact. This isn't weakness. This is what happens when a human being is asked to endure more than humans were designed to endure. But sometimes the world doesn't see it that way. You've been through worse. You'll get through this too. At least you're still here. Everything happens for a reason. These statements are meant to comfort, but to someone who has gone through too much, they feel like dismissal. They don't need to be reminded they've survived. They know. They're exhausted from surviving. They don't need toxic positivity. They need someone to acknowledge that what they've endured is too much for one person to carry. Yet many deeply empathetic, wise, emotionally mature people are those who have gone through too much. Pain carved depth into them. Suffering taught them what matters. They don't take things for granted. They don't sweat small problems. They understand suffering in others because they've lived it themselves.
Maybe that's the bitter gift. Going through too much makes you capable of holding space for others' pain, but it also means you rarely get that space held for you, because everyone assumes you can handle it. You always have before. It teaches you resilience, yes, but it also teaches you that rest is a luxury you can't afford, that your breaking point keeps getting pushed further, that your capacity to endure is both a strength and a curse. Still, here's the question no one asks. What happens when someone who has gone through too much reaches their limit? Sometimes they don't break dramatically. They just stop. Stop trying. Stop hoping. Stop believing things can get better. Not suicidal, just done. Exhausted from the relentless effort of surviving. Sometimes they become numb. Emotions that once ran deep now barely register. Not because they don't care, but because caring hurts too much when everything you care about gets taken away. So they disconnect. They go through the motions. They exist but don't fully live. Sometimes they become hypervigilant, always scanning for the next disaster, always braced for impact, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because in their experience, it always does. Sometimes they isolate, because explaining what they've been through is exhausting, and people who haven't lived it don't understand. They offer solutions to problems that don't have solutions. They minimize pain that is very real. So, it's easier to carry it alone. Sometimes they develop what psychologists call post-traumatic growth. They become stronger, wiser, more compassionate because of what they've endured. But growth and healing are not the same thing. You can grow around trauma without processing it. And unprocessed trauma lives in the body, waiting. And sometimes, often, they simply keep going because they have to, because people depend on them, because there's no other choice. But just because they can keep going doesn't mean they should have to keep going. People who have gone through too much rarely ask for help because they've learned that help doesn't always come, that people get tired of your problems, that you can't rely on others to save you, so they save themselves, over and over, until they're so tired of saving themselves, they can barely stand. But here's what people who have gone through too much need to hear. You're not weak for being tired. You're not failing because you can't handle one more thing with the same grace you handled the first 10. You're not broken because you're exhausted from surviving. You're human. And humans were never meant to endure this much without breaking. If you are someone who has gone through too much, you know this exhaustion intimately. You know what it's like to wake up and immediately feel the weight of everything you're carrying. You know what it's like to be told you're so strong while feeling like you're barely holding together. You know what it's like to function while falling apart inside, to smile when you're screaming, to say, "I'm fine," when you're drowning. You know what it's like to have survived so much that people assume you can survive anything. But survival is not unlimited, and resilience has a breaking point.
What if your exhaustion is not weakness? What if it's your body's way of saying, this is too much and you deserve rest? What if you're not failing?
What if the amount you've endured would have destroyed most people? And the fact that you're still here is evidence of extraordinary strength, not evidence that you should keep enduring more. Let's go deeper into what happens psychologically when someone goes through too much. Number 1, cumulative trauma and nervous system dysregulation. When trauma stacks without time to process, the nervous system stays activated. Fight, flight, freeze becomes the automatic default. The body never fully relaxes because it's learned that danger is constant. Number 2, resilience fatigue. Resilience is not infinite. Every time you bounce back, it takes energy. When you're forced to bounce back repeatedly without rest, eventually you run out. This isn't weakness, it's depletion. Number 3, complicated grief and unprocessed loss. When losses happen too close together, you don't get to grieve properly. You're dealing with the next crisis before you've processed the last one. Those ungrieved losses accumulate. Number 4, learned helplessness and loss of agency. When bad things keep happening regardless of what you do, you stop believing you have control over your life. Why try when trying doesn't change outcomes? Number 5, emotional numbing and dissociation. The brain protects itself from overwhelming pain by shutting down emotional responsiveness. You become numb, not because you don't care, but because feeling everything would be unbearable. Number 6, hypervigilance and inability to trust safety. Your brain learned that peace is temporary. So even in calm moments, you're scanning for threat. You can't relax because relaxing means being unprepared for the next blow. But here lies the painful truth. The person who has gone through too much often feels guilty for struggling because they should be grateful to be alive, because others have it worse, because they survived before, so they should be able to handle this. But survival is not a competition, and suffering is not negated by other people's suffering. Your pain is real, even if someone else's pain is also real. Your exhaustion is valid, even if you've survived before. Your right to rest is not contingent on having suffered enough. If you've gone through too much and you're tired, you're not ungrateful, you're depleted. If you can't find joy in things that used to bring you joy, you're not broken, you're emotionally exhausted. If you're functioning but not living, you're not failing, you're surviving. And survival takes everything you have. There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes with going through too much, because people don't understand unless they've lived it. They offer advice that doesn't fit. Just stay positive. Focus on the good things. Everything happens for a reason. But when you've lost the good things over and over, positivity feels like gaslighting. When every reason feels cruel, finding meaning feels impossible. So you stop talking about it. You carry it alone, because explaining is exhausting and being misunderstood is painful. But carrying it alone is also killing you. And here's the part no one tells you. Going through too much doesn't make you stronger in the way people think. Yes, you become capable of surviving things others can't. Yes, you develop resilience. But you also become tired in ways that rest doesn't fix. You become cautious in ways that limit your life. You become protective in ways that keep people out. You don't emerge from fire unscathed. You emerge burned. And those burns don't always heal cleanly. People who have gone through too much often become one of two things: deeply compassionate or deeply protective. Some open their hearts wider because they know what suffering feels like and they don't want others to feel it alone. Others close their hearts tighter
because they've been hurt too many times and they can't survive another wound. Neither is wrong. Both are adaptations to pain. The person who has gone through too much deserves rest, deserves gentleness, deserves to stop being asked to endure more just because they've endured before. They deserve to be told, "You've been through enough. You don't have to keep proving your strength. You don't have to handle one more thing. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to need help. You're allowed to say, 'I can't take any more.'" Now let's talk directly to you, clearly, without pretense. If you have gone through too much, this message is for you. You are not weak for being exhausted. You are not failing for struggling. You are not broken for reaching your limit. You have survived things that would have destroyed others. And yes, that means you're strong. But it also means you're tired. And tired is not the same as weak.
You have been asked to endure more than any one person should have to endure. And the fact that you're still here does not mean you should have to endure more. Your capacity to survive is not an invitation for life to keep testing you. You deserve rest. You deserve gentleness. You deserve for someone to say, "You've been through enough," instead of, "You're so strong, you'll get through this too." Because maybe you will get through it. You've gotten through everything else. But just because you can doesn't mean you should have to. Just because you've survived worse doesn't mean this doesn't hurt. Just because you're still functioning doesn't mean you're okay. You're allowed to not be okay. You're allowed to admit that you've reached your limit. You're allowed to stop being strong for 5 minutes and just collapse. You've earned the right to fall apart. You've held it together through more than most people will face in a lifetime. And if you need to hear this, it's not weak to ask for help. It's not failure to admit that you can't do this alone anymore. You've been alone through too much already. The world will tell you that suffering builds character, that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, that you should be grateful for your resilience. But you don't owe the world gratitude for the pain you've endured. You don't owe anyone strength. You don't owe anyone the performance of being fine when you're not. You may have gone through too much, but that doesn't define your worth. You are not valuable because you survived. You were always valuable. The pain just revealed strength you already had. And now that strength is tired, and that's okay. You don't have to keep carrying everything alone. You don't have to keep being the strong one. You don't have to keep enduring more just because you've endured before. One day, maybe not today, maybe not soon, but one day you'll be able to rest, to breathe without bracing for impact, to trust that peace can last. And when that day comes, you'll realize something. You didn't just survive, you endured. And endurance, when it's finally allowed to stop, becomes peace. Until then, be gentle with yourself. Stop apologizing for being tired. Stop forcing yourself to bounce back on someone else's timeline. You've been through too much. And that's not a weakness to overcome. It's a reality to honor. Because people who have gone through too much aren't failing when they struggle. They're human beings who've been asked to be superhuman for far too long. And being human, messy, tired, struggling, overwhelmed human, is not only okay, it's the bravest thing you can be after everything you've survived. Keep going if you can. Rest if you need to. Break if you must. But know this, you've already proven your strength 1,000 times over. You don't have to prove it again. You just have to survive today. And if surviving today means falling apart, then fall apart. You've held it together through too much already. You've earned the right to let go. The person who has gone through too much is not weak. They're exhausted. And exhaustion after enduring the unendurable
is the most human response there is. You've been through too much, and you deserve for someone to finally say, "That's enough. You've done enough. You've survived enough. You can rest now."